Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. It's Tuesday afternoon. It's myself, Declan McConville, joined by James McKenzie, Brian Degnan. It's Love Day. We're sharing the love in Acsom here on this Valentine's Tuesday. I know it's a special day for Celtic fans all around the world for another reason. Well, I won't dwell too much on that. So it's a happy Valentine's Day to you all. You all know what I mean. It's a very happy Valentine's Day. Brian, we were just saying before we came on air, 7:30 this morning, Celtic dropped the video. They gave us a wee teaser last night. We were going to get to see the players respond to some tweets coming in from fans. Callum McGregor looked a wee bit anxious, I think, after watching some of that. But what was your whole take on the whole, players sitting down to read the tweets out? Some are a wee bit over the top, I think.
I hated it. I think with these guys, with the players sitting down, it is kind of fun in a way to see them. I like when you see the one with Greg Taylor and Johnson was really quite good. He was teaching the Scottish phrases. That was kind of fun, right? Because obviously they're both quite funny guys. But you simply cannot get Aaron Moy reading a tweet to get a funny response. The big man was doing this. Yes, I know he's going to load his way through. He wants me to say hello. And it was criminal. I felt it as if it lasted about an hour and a half. He's brilliant at football. He's not a good talker. You can't be putting these things out. Not for me. Hated it.
Yeah. Just let everybody know, Brian is available for Steve Irwin impressions if that's what you're after, by the way. James, what was your take on it? I thought you could have probably put Jota in front of the camera for the whole 5 minutes of it. I think he was certainly the highlight of it. You know, when he's talking about that mullet ready for anything. You see his Glaswegians getting even better when he talks about going for a wee dance. I would have just rather they'd fired Jota in front of the camera, I think, for the whole spell. What was your whole take for the video?
It was quite funny. Half it was people calling Jota and O'Reilly handsome. The other half was people asking to kiss Moy and Maida's heads, which I thought was very strange.
I can't believe that, James. That's what I was surprised about.
Brian, I was expecting him to have shaved the barnet when he came on today, by the way.
Well, I've got a bald cap for Halloween last year. Maybe I should have rocked up for that one.
Thanks to everybody who's tuning in just now. We've got people from Melbourne and Australia, Plymouth. You're all very welcome on here. Before we get into the meeting bones, we've just kind of touched on that wee bit of light-heartedness, could you say, on this Valentine's Day. From, if you've not checked it out, go and watch it. It's probably 9 minutes you won't get back, but it's quite funny. One thing I was actually really impressed about it, taking away from the laughter, and it was Rio Hatate, Brian. He obviously said in that diary entry that he does, I think it's every kind of 3 months or whatever, that coping with not being selected for the World Cup. He was talking about how he's adapting to life in Glasgow, and one thing he paid particular attention to was when he's going to Lennoxtown in the morning, he's trying to learn English, and it was quite impressive, and now been at Celtic for a year, to see him in that video. He's rather than speaking his native tongue, he's having a go.
Aye, absolutely. And I tell you what, his English is considerably better than my Japanese, so I kind of fault the guy for it. What I really like about Hatate is that I remember, I think towards the end of last season, he wrote an article about just having moving and loving himself and feeling mentally great and struggling a wee bit and being tired. And some people were kind of critical. I thought it was excellent from him. I thought it was really nicely written. I thought it was quite brave to open up, and I think it's really refreshing when you see players, just chatting about their feelings, chatting about their situation, chatting about their thoughts. I think it's really good, and I think it's something that people in general, especially guys and especially athletes, don't do enough. So I think it's really key for people to open up, and hopefully, if people see guys like that doing it, maybe they'll be encouraged. But in terms of the football thing, I think what it says about his character is he's determined to improve and make the absolute best in a situation. I think you can see that this season he's been getting better. And I know we're going to talk about the game for the weekend in a bit, but his impact off the bench, it wasn't just the goals, it was a real desire to impress and make sure he starts next time. So I just think he's got a great attitude, and I think that really came across.
Absolutely. James, we'll kick off with Rio Hatate, because where else a better place to start with? Of course, we're going to be talking about Kyogo and O duty, obviously the B-man going off at the weekend, what that might mean potentially for the Viaplay Cup final. We'll get into that, but in Rio Hatate, I think as Brian says, a lot of us thought there'd be a lot of rotation going at the weekend. I certainly said that on here on Friday. See the team sheet come out on Saturday at the back of 4, one change from the St Johnstone game. That one change escape me who, I think it was Aaron Moy coming in midfield, or David Turnbull coming in probably, actually. But in terms of that, when you're looking at it, we were saying before we came on air that, the manager has spoken about whether it's players 5 minutes, 45 minutes, the chance to impress. Rio Hatate came on and he was, I know it was 10 men at St Mirren on Saturday, but he was absolutely fantastic when he came on. He takes that second goal magnificently well.
Yeah, there was when Hatate and O'Reilly came on, I thought that's Celtic went up to a new level. I thought we were already playing it right. It was sort of the standard performance that I've come to expect over recent weeks. But the game that really changed when they came on. Hatate was involved in absolutely everything, and the fifth goal that you were just mentioning there, it's a brilliant finish. It was first time as well, like right into that top corner. It was a fantastic finish, and it was good to see Matt O'Reilly get his first goal this season as well. I think the only other goal he's had was in that wee sort of friendly we had against Rennes during the sort of off period. But the fact that we've got these players coming off the bench and they're able to make an impact, it shows that there's 5 minutes, 45 minutes, no matter how much time you get, there's a chance to impress. And Rio Hatate absolutely done that in the game at the weekend, and for sure he will probably be back in the starting lineup for the next fixture.
Yep, no doubt he'll probably start the game against Aberdeen. Brian, that probably takes us on nicely into the kind of midfield setup. It was something, again, we spoke about on Friday. Things can change very quickly. It wasn't Aaron Moy's best performance in a Celtic jersey at the weekend by any means, but again, you've got Matt O'Reilly coming off the benches, back chatting at the door of the manager, gets that first goal. You mentioned last week, he's still got the top assists at the club. And, everybody just playing their part just now, but in terms of Matt O'Reilly, it was great to see him get that goal eventually.
Well, I'm always happy to see Big Matt. I've been sending him Valentine's Day cards every week since he joined. No, listen, he's an excellent player, and I think he came on and done really well as well. I think when you've got a player that has quality coming off the bench, I think it really illustrates the strength of depth, particularly in midfield. And as you see, Aaron Moy didn't have the greatest game, but I think he set up the first goal, didn't he?
Yeah.
Moy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ball across the face.
Still with a strong contribution. We really come on. It's good to see him score. Hopefully, if he keeps scoring, that's the only thing that's been missing for his game. If he can get that down, start improving again, get back into the side. And the thing about it is as well, you're not disappointed when you see the team lineups, regardless of who's starting and who's not. I mean, generally speaking, we always do our predictions. Who would you start? Who do you think's going to start? Etc. But very few times do you look at it and go, oh no, why is he starting him? What's going on? It's just not that type of squad now. And it almost doesn't matter. And I know we're going to talk about Kyogo, but even if Kyogo's not playing, you still sort of think there's enough there. And the system's so strong and the players are so drilled that, yeah, of course, individual brilliance always counts. But you can sort of take someone out of that and it doesn't really affect the whole team dynamic. And I think it's just an amazing situation to be in. I think Colin was talking the other day about how much easier and how much more pleasurable it is talking about Celtic now, as opposed to in the sort of latter days of Lennon's time. That's no disrespect to Lennon, but also the team was playing really poorly. And then it seems so long ago if you're watching a game playing that badly, because I think we're a wee bit spoiled with the football we're seeing, I think, honestly.
Yeah, it's a special team. It's a special group of players at this point in time. That's a wee link back to, I popped up on Twitter earlier today that it was 2 years ago today that we won up at McDermott Park. Godson Edwards scored 2 cracking goals for Celtic, and that was actually the last time that we won on the road until the beginning of October in 2021. So even that's less than 2 years ago. To think about that, in a context of February to October, a Celtic team no winning in the road at all is unbelievable. To think about, James, I'll bring in this comment here. People are speaking about, Ange using that 5 sub rule well here, saying, it's a joy having a strong starting 11 and a bench that is solid. This 5 sub rule has been a godsend. Ange uses it to the max. But I'm going to fire the flip of that over to you. K-Mats, who's coming in the comments here to say the whole point of having 2 players at every spot is to use 2 players at every spot. What's the point of having them if you don't use them? What's your take on that? Because obviously first part of the season we were navigating through a Champions League campaign and we were using the squad to maximum effect. We were going midweek into weekend. Has it surprised you that the rotation's not been as much, or can you not rotate your team too much when you're playing, once every week and you're building towards a cup final?
Well, due to the system that Celtic play, every player needs to be in tip-top fitness. It has to be at the sort of best possible level it has to be. So I think we've got the team there that could play 2 times a week in, week out. And with how packed the fixture schedule's been getting recently, it's going to wind down a bit as we get closer to the end of the season and the cups start to wind down as well. But I would have expected a bit more rotation, but there's still been quite a lot of rotation anyway. In the cup, we had David Turnbull coming, a rare opportunity for him. But just on, I think 2 players for each position is how I would set up a team if I was a manager anyway. And it's really smart from Ange that you've got high quality in every single position. Anybody could drop out, you'd be confident with the replacement that's going to come in. And that's what a top team does. I think this 5-sub rule, it's really benefited Celtic, I think. I know every team has 5 subs, but not every team has the depth that we have. It's a testament to the team that Ange has built.
Brian, what's your take on it? Because I know people will continually say, they're concerned that, people might start to become frustrated at that and whatever else. But to me, at this point in time, kind of looking at February's fixture haul, apart from that Livingston game at the beginning of the month, that was only midweek fixture. I think when you're building towards the cup final, as I say, it's very difficult to make too many alterations to your team, and you want to build momentum towards something like that. I think maybe off the back of that, you might see starting to make those changes. I know we're going to talk about Hearts in the Scottish Cup with that draw happening yesterday, but I think for me anyway, it's one game now to go before that Rangers game, and everybody's going to want to play in it.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points here. So I've heard a lot of people saying that the 5-sub rule benefits Celtic more because it's better players. But the argument I would say against that is that if you look at St Mirren and look at their performance, right, I thought St Mirren were pretty good against us. I think the 5-1 scoreline flattered us, if I'm honest. I thought it was a tighter game than that. But the reason they played so well is because they were really, really fit and they were working so hard, right? Now, inevitably, what's going to happen is their fitness levels are going to crash and then we start to dominate at the end. But if they can replace half their outfield team, surely that's just as much an advantage. So if they can replace those 5 players that are getting tired and keep playing that way, there's nothing to say they couldn't get the result. So I think the 5-sub rule does benefit, even for that perspective, even if it's maybe not a skill thing. From a sheerly a fitness perspective, obviously with Celtic, you've got better quality coming off. But that's just because you could make that, if you take that argument to its logical conclusion, then we shouldn't be allowed to make any subs because we've always got better quality coming off the bench, so we've always got an advantage. So I think it's a wee bit overrated, the sort of Celtic are benefiting more for the 5-sub rule, because I don't really agree with it. What I would like to see in terms of rotation, because I think that's the other thing. I know Ange doesn't do mass rotation, but I think very rarely does he play the same starting 11 twice. I think there's often at least 1, maybe 2 changes. The only thing he doesn't tend to change is the back 4 or back 5 if you count Joe Hart. But he has said in the past that's the hardest place to get into his team is the defence. The only thing I would like to see different is, maybe the last 2 subs of the game could be like a Vata or a Lol or an Iwata, guys that maybe haven't played a lot to come on, especially if you're a couple of goals up. I'd like to see more use of the sort of, no fringe players, but guys that maybe a bit of a chance, even the Kobayashis to come in for the last 15 minutes of a game. If you're winning 3-0, there's no reason not to do it. So I'd like to see more of that, but I can't say I've got a huge issue with the rotation, because I think Ange said it well a while ago. He says when people are questioning the lineups, they know about 10% of what I know about what I'm seeing every day. So it could be attitude, could be fitness, could be the way they've trained. There's always reasons. So I think we've all been scolded by trying to second guess Ange, because usually he proves us all wrong every single week, which, and all the better for it.
Yeah, and can I go into a cup game? Some of us would have thought, I keep touching back in that kind of Raith Rovers game last season, that you might have got 4 or 5 subs, but as I say, I just think with the fixture pile up, it would have been interesting had you had, whether it be Europa League or football after Christmas, some form of European football, if you would have then seen that rotation there. But that's not in our fixture schedule, so you're just playing it as it is. I mean, you've only got one fixture a week. You just need to manage your squad to the base of that point. And again, as I say, I think that's building towards that cup final, which is, it's one game at a time, but it's still at the back of the manager's mind to have that in his thoughts. That Aberdeen game's going to come. It's going to be our final league game before that cup final. Again, you wouldn't expect too many changes going into that team. But as I say, I think there's always going to be it's going to be a debate in Celtic fans, because people are going to say, you've got a big squad there, use it. Whereas others are going to say, you don't want to change a winning team too much. But I think, looking at other cup scalps or whatever else, that we were right not to take St Mirren, as an easy game. Because you say, Brian, I thought they played pretty well. They had a go at Celtic Park, the two up top. They kind of went into a 5-3-2 towards the latter stages of the game, which was, a 5-2-2 almost, because of your man getting sent off. But fair play to St Mirren for that at the weekend.
The thing to remember as well, Dex, there's always two sides to it. So say we did rotated the squad, as you say, against St Mirren, and played maybe some younger players, the so-called fringe players, and they get beat. Then everybody blames that, and they say, so why did you rotate? Or if you play some of the younger players, he's not ready, he shouldn't be at Celtic. The pressure's suddenly worse. The flip side is, if you play these guys and they're winning, you go, hold on, maybe they can hold their place down. So there's always two ways of looking at it. I think that, as much as you want to see rotation, maybe some of these guys, like I'm dying to see Iwata play. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to say what I said on Friday. I think if he does play, McGregor will move forward and he'll drop into McGregor's number 6. I don't think McGregor will get dropped. So that would be quite good. So you might see wee bits of rotation like that. But again, it's a fine margin, because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if you win it all and these guys get dropped, then you say, why you dropped him? He won last week. If you play him, then don't get beat. You say, why don't play him again? I understand how frustrating, how difficult it must be for the manager.
No, absolutely. And, what do we know? That the manager knows best always, in my opinion. We can only kind of think as fans what we would do and what not.
We can only ramble innately.
Ramble, that's it. And James, at the weekend, maybe a lot of us would have thought, Kyogo's went off the park, here comes on. But the manager didn't do that. He went to Dyson Maeda and, playing through the middle, something he does for his international side. He did it the World Cup there. That's where he gets his goal from. And it's great that we've also got that option there and a flexibility with the forward players that we can do that in the game.
Yeah, I was in the exact same boat. As soon as Kyogo went off, I was thinking, well, this will be a good, 70 minutes to see Oh Hyun-gu get a proper sort of bash at it. One glance at Tot and you're wondering, why is he not coming on? But then we're all proven wrong, as Dyson Maeda moves to the middle and scores minutes after Kyogo goes off. So, I think, don't doubt Ange. There's only been maybe 2 instances I can think of this season where you could have doubted the team selection. You'd have been proven right. That would be St Mirren and the Ibrox game. Those are the only 2 instances I can think of. But at the end of the day, we're just fans. Ange's manager, he picks the team, and probably 99% of the time he's bang on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian, in terms of that, it's our tagline today. We want to look at we get his first goal for Celtic at the weekend. As I say, Dyson Maeda get his goal playing through the middle, but I think that'll do all the world a good. And as a Celtic forward, I think at this point in time, that's the kind of goals you want to see him score, because how many times do we put those flashing balls across the box? So it was great for both of them to get the goal, but I think Saturday will probably be a good indication that if Kyogo isn't going to make the cup final, and again, that's up in the air just now, we don't know. As far as the press are reporting today, he's going to get a scan, so we'll likely know within the next couple of days. But it'll be interesting to see what he does at the weekend, because even if Kyogo is going to be fit and available for the cup final, I think that's what we're all hoping and praying is the case. You want to get some minutes into his legs, just in case that this situation arises again.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to say though, I think I've said it a couple of times that I never really feel that Dyjen's a winger. He never fits that mold for me. I don't think his crossing's brilliant, but he works so hard. So I actually prefer him through the middle. Like I think he's really effective there. I don't think he's nearly as clinical as good a goal scorer as Kyogo, but he works so hard for the front that he just occupies a whole back 4 on his own, and it allows, say, Abada or Jota to come into the striker's role. So I quite like Maeda there, and I think if Kyogo can't make the cup final, I would start Maeda, because I think he's got a bit more experience in that system and in those games. That being said, I would like to see O feature for the start before that to give the manager the headache. Because if O comes in and scores a hat-trick against Aberdeen, say, then you think, oh, wait a minute, hold on here. You can see how he does over a full game, because we've only seen sort of wee cameos, and if he was like the type of striker that, he's at penalty box, sort of, you will get those wee extra knock-ins and stuff like that, right place, right time kind of striker. So I would like to see O before the final start a game, but I suspect if Kyogo isn't fit, it would be Maeda that starts. And I saw Paddy Lavery in the chat. Paddy, your card's on the way, pal. I've not forgot about you.
I hope there's plenty of X's on it, Brian. Just to kind of, bring that into the conversation there, as I was checking my phone there, I was looking to see who we played in the semi-final. The last time we played Rangers at Hampden, and we went with Dyson Maeda through the middle then. It was Abada on the right-hand side and Jota on the left-hand side, which maybe wouldn't be too far away with what we would possibly play. But again, James, a big thing a lot of people said, with Yakimakis departing the building was, even though he didn't score against Rangers in any of the derby games, it always gave the centre-halves a torrid time due to his physicality. We know that O has got that in his locker, maybe not to the same extent as Yakimakis, but O's also got that way that he can turn a player. But again, as Brian says, the system, I think, is always going to be the thing that the manager, has that focus on. It was something he was trying to do last season. You could see it wasn't working because the personnel just went there to do it. But now in a position that the system, to me, from that semi-final was in a lot better place. And the team, likely, if that was to be the case and Dyson played for the middle, wouldn't be too far away from that Celtic team that played that Scottish Cup semi-final. But I think, even from then, we've made improvements in the way that we play.
Yeah, especially in some of the brought in players like Acsom. The team has... You can't even say the team's come in leaps and bounds because we're still very good at that point. But the next few weeks will be very telling as to how we're going to line up in that. If we see Kyogo back, if he's not back, I would like to see O play for the middle. We've signed him to be the backup striker to hopefully eventually come in over Kyogo. So we've hardly really seen him play either. We've seen 5-10 minutes here and there. We've seen him play a wee bit. We've seen him score, but unless you're an avid fan of the K-League, then you don't fully know about Oh Hyun-gu. So we'll need to see how he plays. It looks a lot more similar to a Yakimakis mould than a Kyogo mould. So if he can cause some trouble for that Rangers backline, much like Yakimakis did, it will sort of wield some good results. But like you were saying earlier, if Maeda plays for the middle, there's no problems with that either. We know he can cause havoc to Rangers as well. From the wings, we've seen, but through the middle, I'm sure he would have a similar effect.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's great that we've got the option, that we're not thinking, we need to shoehorn in. I know some people would say that's what you're doing with Dyson Maeda, but as I say, he plays that role very well for Japan. Just to give a shout out to our tie-in with One Star. If you'd have caught last week on the pod, we had Paul Lambert and Simon Donnelly on. If you've not watched it, do catch up with it. Really good insight from Paul Lambert. There's even some from words of wisdom there from the League Cup final, another League Cup final back there in '97, when of course Celtic went to Ibrox and beat Dundee United in the first trophy won under Wim Jansen. It's a cup, speaking to a lot of the players in that team, particularly Jackie McNamara, that said that it was a big step in the team actually that season believing that they could go on to win the league. A lot of people were comparing that season with our sales last year. So One Star are putting on an event at the Armadillo this year to celebrate 25 years since stopping the 10. Acsom are giving away 2 general tickets for the event. So all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. We've got a pair of tickets there. So if you're not already doing it, please do subscribe to the channel. We're not too far off, nearly hitting 20.7k subs, which is a phenomenal going. So please do subscribe if you haven't already, and you'll be in the chance to win those fantastic tickets. It's free to do, so why not do it? Click the big button. Back to that debate then, Brian. For me, if the manager is to probably go with Ohungu at Hampden Saturday with a big tail factor in that against Aberdeen, you're going to need to see him get a lot more minutes than what we've seen so far. Is that why you think, and you'd possibly be in the side of thinking that the manager would opt for Dyson Maeda instead?
Yeah, as I say, I think there'll be I think as well, if you play O for the start, then they might be thinking, oh, he's definitely going to start against us in the cup final, and then obviously Maeda starts, and that's different preparation. So there could be a wee bit of mind games in it as well. But I think whether he's going to start against them or not, I think O has to get a full game in so he's ready just in case. Because you never know how the game's going to go. It could be the case that, you know, something happens to one of the wingers and Maiden gets moved back out wide and O has to come in. So there's a lot can happen. So I think the squad will be as ready as possible. And talking about the Scottish Cup semi-final, I think we're a different beast for them. I think in terms of the style of play is obviously no change, but there's a real resilience about the team. You see that, you know, the amount of times we're scoring late, we're kind of refusing to lose. Which sounds stupid, right? But you can see in the players are just, no, we're going to win. We're going to win no matter what. I absolutely loved Strachan and Ange's conversation after the game the other day. So people that watch will know Gordon Strachan's one of my favourite ever Celtic managers. I think he did an exceptional job. I think he's really underrated in this sort of pantheon of managers.
Very, very witty as well, Brian. That's one thing I like about him. I know you don't judge a manager and he's patter, but you know, if you're judging him in that, he's world class in the sharpness and the patter. He's
world class. I remember the famous one when the guy says, "Gordon, can we get a quick word?" and he says velocity and just walks on. It's just genius, right? It's just brilliant. He got asked as well one time, I think it was when he was in charge of Coventry, and he says, "Gordon, what areas do you feel the other team are better than you on?" He says, "Well, the big green one out there for a start." But what I loved about him and Ange talking was they were talking about the fitness, and you could listen to them just talk about football and tactics all day. But
I thought you were going to say the Gavin Strachan love in there. Sorry.
Eh?
I thought you were going to say the Gavin Strachan love in there.
No, the Gavin Strachan love. Although he's getting, him and Kennedy have sort of recovered for the grief they took before. But I think them talking about the fitness, and I never quite made the link, because one of the things I liked about Strachan's team was they were so fit. And I remember talking to Scott McDonald one time when he played, and he was saying that when he played against opposition teams, when it got to the last 10 minutes, whether they were winning or losing, they always dropped back, and you could tell they started getting nervous because they knew Celtic were score because they were fitter. Mm-hmm. And you see that in Ange's team as well. There's that sort of real resilience, real high level of fitness, and it just never seemed beat. And if you look at what Strachan's team achieved, you know, last 16 twice, they just never looked beat. No matter what the scores, you always felt that they were going to win, they were going to pull it back somehow. And I feel that with Ange's team. And then you add in the fact that Ange's team is playing exceptional attacking football. We have a brilliant squad. So I think the difference for the previous game against them in the Cup to this one coming up is that shift in mentality. And I think that's what we'll see through regardless of who he picks.
Yeah, and again, you know, you were up against a team there who, for a start, had a different coach. That was a trait of them. You know, they went all the way in a European final. They went all the way in a Scottish Cup final in that. It was something that had been built into their mentality. We, at that point, I think after extra time, looked like a team that was starting to become a bit weary on our feet. And I don't really think we got to the point in the system, Brian, as you say, that the manager wanted or expected us to. Just to look at the subs that day as well. Our first two subs were Furuhashi on for Abada and O'Reilly on for Tom Rogic, and then we brought Ralston on for Juranovic, we brought Welsh on for Taylor, and Forrest came on for Dice and Maeda. So just kind of looking at that, I think any subs you would bring on likely to be stronger than those. Obviously that extra one in there because we went to extra time that day. But I totally agree with what you say. I think the whole system and the way that we play football just now is a far way away for that game. You know, there are people on the bench, you know, Julian, McCarthy, Johnston, Adaguchi, not a lot of choices compared to what a Celtic bench would look like at this point in time. So it's an interesting one, and I found it fascinating myself. The particular point, you know, Gordon really do a lot of detail with that kind of 35-yard point where Celtic like to play with a team. And again, you know, you wouldn't have always thought as Strachan as this kind of technical manager, particularly in my time. I was young watching his Celtic team. I kind of more remember him as a Scotland boss. It's not something that I would have always thought. Obviously, towards the end of that Scotland management setup, we get absolute pasting for talking about height and players being a downside to Scottish players. But I found it really, really interesting. I would like to see that as a sit-down chat, Gordon and Big Ange. I think it would certainly make for interesting viewing. From one cup, James, to another, we'll go over to the Scottish Cup. We got the draw yesterday. Biffy Clyro Made the draw. You a fan of Biffy Clyro, by the way?
What, myself?
Aye.
I ken they're a Scottish band and all that, but I couldn't tell you a single Biffy Clyro song.
The
Many a
captain's
Fourer's the one that
I
always
remember.
that's a belter.
Many a Forer, Brian, aye. That the one you says there?
That's the one I know, but I love it,
Aye.
so it counts.
Aye. No, listen, it's only kind of album that I know. It's kind of album cover. And I've got, I think it's like kites or something as the front cover. But I know they're Kelly fans as well. And a few people thought it was a few of the old hot boys at play last night. I don't really subscribe to that. Although, you know, Celtic are on the road in the Scottish Cup now. And the first positive, Brian, is we'll probably get the whole Roseburn stand that we've not got for, I think, since 2019.
Aye, hopefully. It'd be good to. Yeah, I always think it never makes sense to me when you see stands empty and Celtic fans would take them. It's always seems like clubs are always cutting their noses off to spite their face because, look, the chances are they're going to lose the game anyway, right? And I'm not saying clubs should give up, but be sensible, make a bit of money off it at least. If you're going to get a spanking, then get a spanking with a few quid. I hope they do sound bites that and uses it against me at some point, but yeah.
James, what's your take on it? Because I think the rule in the Scottish Cup's 20%. I was at Tynecastle that night, the last time that we got the full stand. I was there for the 4-3 game in October, but there's something missing. It's always great. I think, you know, following Celtic anywhere, whether it's Easter Road, Tynecastle, or previously at Ibrox, when you were getting that full stand behind the goal, Motherwell's another one that you get it. It's always great to create an atmosphere. But listen, I know Hearts, you know, would bat right back saying, you know, we've sold tickets in there and whatever. But it'll be nice, you know, for Celtic to get that full stand again behind the goal and hopefully see us book our place in the semi-final of the Cup come then.
Yeah, it'd be good to get as many Celtic fans there as possible, considering the always toxic atmosphere that is Tynecastle, considering that they've sort of made some decent strides. They've had 2 wins in Europe, so there's sort of a bit rejuvenated fan base. The fans have been coming in, their numbers have been getting good ticket sales there, so I'm sure they'll get a good crowd in as well. But just that was one of the draws that I was hoping not to get. I mean, so the worst possible scenario for draws you could have got there was Ibrox or Tynecastle, and that's what we've got. And he's 2-1 at Tynecastle in his management. The first one was his first league game, which I'm sure you could probably let him off with that one. And then 2 wins there since then, but they've always been tough games. I remember we were a Liam Boyce penalty away from dropping points.
Yep, smacked the post.
Game. And then the 4-3 game, I don't really want to get into the VAR discussion again. We've talked about that far too much in the podcast. But again, it was a tough game, really tight. And it will be something similar when we face them at Tynecastle next. Because Hearts, third in the league, far and away third in the league, and they'll always give it a good game. But should be strong enough to get past them. It's a game that Celtic should be winning. We would be winning it in the league, and we're probably going to win it here as well.
Yeah, hopefully. And, you know, VAR, that was the first game I think it was ever used was in the league. That seems a hell of a long time ago. But hopefully it doesn't take as much precedent as it did that day. Although I would have my reservations about it actually doing that. But Brian, just kind of looking at the fixture of this, I said before we came on, our rescheduled game against Hearts in the league is going to be played on the 8th of March at Celtic Park. That's already been decided. That game was meant to be the weekend that the Cup final's on, so that's already been put in the diary. It's the 8th of March, meaning that we're going to play Hearts twice in the space of, you know, maximum 5 days. But it's likely that the game's either going to be Saturday or Monday because Scotland play Ireland at Murrayfield on the Sunday. Obviously, you wouldn't play a Friday night, having played Wednesday. Probably likely to be Saturday 5:30. Don't know about Monday. That seems to be the BBC slot. It used to be the Darvel slot until they get absolutely battered off the Bairns last night. But it's going to be interesting because I always I don't worry about it, but playing a team twice in such close proximity can have its problems. But again, I think as James says, we should have enough quality and depth to get through both games unscathed, hopefully pick up 3 points in the league and book our place in the semi-final.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we spoke about rotation earlier on, so I don't have any trouble playing them twice in a short space of time because we could totally change our starting 11 if we wanted to, and it's a different game, right? In terms of the draw, I didn't really care who we got. I'm kind of a bit even when it was the Champions League draw, I was happy with anybody. I always think, Celtic on form, play anybody. I'd rather play the best every step of the way and win it than get the wee sneaky teams and then try and get it. I like the challenge. I think it's one of the brilliant things about Celtic is we always seem to rise to it all the time. And I always think the atmosphere is brilliant at Tynecastle. I actually think Scotland should play the Scottish football team should play their home games there to the Hampden, because it's always a cracking atmosphere. It's a stadium. Not a huge fan of their fan base, to be fair, and I think if they can agree that some of the
had a great Saturday afternoon. The last time I was there, a particular gentleman who was making very rude signs towards me towards the whole game. But when Taylor scored the winner and towards the end of the game, Brian, I was having a great time.
Aye, it's always good to put them in their place, and as we want to do. But I think the players like that. I think this you can tell, and that's an atmosphere. There's certain players that thrive under it. But I think, again, going back to the squad mentality, I think they enjoy that challenge. I think they enjoy being pushed and pressed. And actually, going back to this Mirren game, the way St Mirren pressed the back, no many teams have done that to us domestically. And you could see, Carter Vickers particularly seemed to absolutely thrive. See, against Big Curtis Main and getting pressed with him, Carter Vickers was still moving to the side and just doing his normal pass, just super composure. But you could tell they sort of liked that challenge. Starfelt, I was worried about just because he's so aggressive at times. I think he wants to win everything all the time, and sometimes you can't. But even then, he acquitted himself well, penalty aside. So I think they'll thrive under that. I think they like the pressure, and that always gives me great confidence going into these games, especially cup games.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. My dad's motto always in the Scottish Cup, Brian, is the cup, play anybody. If you're going to win it, you need to beat anybody. So that's the way we should always go. But it's going to be tasty. But I think that's a good shout there in terms of Cameron Carter Vickers. It was, not nice to see him get a challenge, but you could tell he was thriving in it. And it was a real tough test up against Curtis Main, who we knows got that physicality in his game, but no issues at all for the big man. He got man of the match. I think he was very much deserving of it. I thought Daizen Maeda was also in with a shout. I thought he was excellent on Saturday, just the way he was aggressive, he was pressing, and the fact he had to change positions in the game. But speaking about defenders, leads us on nicely to today's rumour mill. James, we'll cover it because it's there. It's an old pal Fabrizio Romano again, who we know doesn't get everything right, don't we? We've heard, nonsense before from Fabrizio, but he's quite a well-placed source, so you need to give him his place. And on this, if anybody's not seen it, just get the comment up here. It's Carol Starfelt, here it is here. Fabrizio Romano saying today, Premier League teams are looking at Carol Starfelt. Are you surprised about that at all, James? Or is that, is that something that you expected to eventually see just based on his performances?
I'd be lying if I was to say that wasn't shocked when I saw the news come out. I think if you're looking at Celtic's backline, probably the one that you'd least expect to have the Premier League interest would be Carl Starfelt. I thought it would have been Cameron Carter Vickers that the clubs would be after. But a move to a lower Premier League team, I think it could be something that could be on the cards come the summer. I think he'll be 27, 28 come the summer. He's not exactly the youngest of players. So I'm pretty surprised, to be honest. I don't know what sort of fee we would try and command for Starfelt either, because we signed him for about £3-4 million. So if you could double that or even triple that, then I think you would take the money and you've got a ready-made replacement in Kobayashi. And it's something we've seen Celtic do so often. And I know the summer window's ages away, but if the situation were to arise where a player would go, we've got quality to come in straight away. And that's just, again, a testament to Ange's transfer policy.
Yeah, it's interesting in the terms of Brian. I always find that it kind of likes a wee bit to Yakimakis in terms of age, profile, where they're at, how that works for Celtic at this point in time. So as James touches on, Carl Starfelt at this point is 27. He'll be 28 come the 1st of June. He signed for Celtic in the summer of 2021. It was a fee of around £4 million. If you remember right, Chris Ayer had just departed the building, I think, for about 15 million when Big Ayer left. And right away, Starfelt was unveiled. They used a bit of David Bowie, if you remember right, to unveil him. Used the old Starman stuff, which I thought was really impressive, by the way. As a big Bowie geek, I was like, well done, Celtic. I like stuff like that. So he's came in, he's obviously formed that solid partnership with Cameron Carter-Vickers. He's split opinion at times. I think it's fair to say by Celtic fans, not everybody's been a big fan of Carl Starfelt. Certainly myself, I think he's a good player, and I've been impressed with his partnership with Cameron Carter-Vickers. Incredibly, when he and Vickers have started a game together in the league, Celtic have never been beat, which is quite an incredible stat. But you saw possibly the injuries creeping a wee bit. If you think in the first part of the season, obviously was out after picking up an injury with Sweden. He came back, if I'm right, played at Tannadice. He scored, having played at Rugby Park and scored. Came into the Rangers game, got subbed off injured. Yates came back on. Where do you think we're at with Carl Starfelt, kind of nearly 2 years in here?
So Starfelt's an interesting one. So I kind of liken him to Joe Hart in a way, in that I think Starfelt's an excellent defender. I've always been pretty consistent. I think he's absolutely solid defensively, but I do get concerned that as Ange wants to see the team progress and get better and better, I don't think his ball work's going to improve that much more. And it's the same with Joe Hart. As good as Joe Hart's been, if we really want to move up to another level, we will need a keeper who's better with the ball at their feet. So the reason I say the summer is, if Carl Starfelt was to go, I'd be probably quite gutted, because I think he's been good for us. But Kobayashi, I think, has been brought in to be his replacement. Left-sided, very good with the ball at his feet. It looks like that's Ange's way of going. So I think that he'll probably be replaced, whether it's whether he wants to or not. I think longer term, Ange is going to look to replace him anyway. The same with Joe Hart. And I don't think it's a reflection on the players. I think it's just as things progress, he'll need the squad to keep progressing and keep getting better. He's a guy who is always about sort of evolution and improving and challenging yourself. And I don't get the impression he goes, that's my best partnership, that's fine, don't worry. I think he'll be expecting Kobayashi to step up, and then Carter-Vickers to eventually go and somebody to replace him. I think that's just how his mind works. So, I like him. I think if we want to move forward, I think we do need a partner that's closer in quality to Carter-Vickers and better the ball at his feet. And I'd say the same about Joe Hart. So really happy with them both. But yeah, I suspect if he goes, I'd be quite comfortable. And actually, Liam, the man from Japan, our fellow Acsom contributor, he reckons Kobayashi is going to be longer term the far better player. He's really high on him, thinks he's got huge potential. So there's also a reason he's been brought in, and it could be the case that Carroll's away.
Brian, he's bang on there. I think I've made the point on the podcast a few times before, but if you want to progress in Europe, you're ultimately going to be ruthless when you're assessing the squad. A player like Starfelt, he's a good player, solid enough for the Scottish Premiership, but if Celtic want to progress in Europe, which I ultimately think Ange's main aim at Celtic will be to progress the team in Europe, and after he's done that, he will eventually leave. You've got to look at the squad as a whole. This player, he's good, but we can do better. Celtic can do better than Carl Starfelt, I think, but he's a solid enough player for the Scottish football.
I want to bring in some comments from our contributors in this, because as I said he splits opinion, the big man, and we've got some split opinions, so we'll bring it in. So David first, he says that Starfelt's been brilliant for Celtic. He can't understand how fans think he'll be easily replaced. Robert Hyland comes in to say, how anyone thinks Starfelt has been brilliant is beyond me. Will McMillan comes in to say Starfelt is a championship player for him. And then David comes in to say players that look after themselves can play at the top level, well into their mid-30s, 27, 28 years. He isn't old anymore. And another one in here to say he's been reliable. So there you go. There's a flavour of some mixed opinion to bring in on Carl Starfelt. Just in terms of the profile, which I think is the thing I'm kind of trying to get at here, Brian, I think you made a really good point. And the manager always speaking about that evolution, how to progress, how to get to a better side. It's not anything against any particular player. It's just looking at them, take the name out of the equation, take the age of them, take their ability and everything else, and then see where we're at. Is it an indication in the January window when we sell a striker who was 27, 28, and a fullback who's 27, 27, I think Juranovic was? I know Ange kept saying he was 28. And then we go for two younger profile players. Is that, an example of how the manager wants a model to work, that you have players, you get to that point, because, Starfelt, the comment coming in there about his age from David about, it isn't old, but we know that value starts to dip a bit as they get to that wee bit older stage? Is it an indication in January of how things will move forward with players that are starting to get to that point? No saying that when somebody turns 27 we'll have them out the door, but for some that the manager will think, right, okay, I can possibly get 10, 15 million pounds here. I'll take that, I'll reinvest it, I'll get a younger guy in, and that's how it works. Is that how it needs to work from now on?
So I think overall the answer would be yes, but I don't think it's just the manager. I think that's how, if you look at the Celtic's traditional player trading model, really since Law came in, we had this idea of getting these players in, making them Champions League calibre was always the selling point, and then selling them on. I don't think that's particularly changed. I just think Ange is better at it than anyone else has been. I think if you look at the players he's signing in general, they're inexpensive. They come from sort of unpopular leagues, and they're at quite a young age. And the idea being, but the difference with him picking these players is they fit the team and they fit the dynamic of the team. Whereas before we were just kind of finding players and just going, well, he's young, he is quite good, sign him in without consideration of how they're going to fit in the system of the team. And I think as well as it's Ange's decision, I think it's a club decision. And I think Ange knows how to work within that mould. The other thing to consider, kind of about Starfelt and Juranovic. So they were two more expensive players. Well, Juranovic wasn't too bad, but he was still a bit more than we normally pay. If you consider Matt O'Reilly was 1 million, Kobush's stories $1 million or 800 grand or something like that. Starfelt was also about 4 million, but at the time we were desperate for a centre half. I mean, we had to just buy and get in. I don't think we had, because Ange was basically making up a whole squad, and I don't think we had the. I don't think we had the
quite like that. It's very good. I like that.
Yeah, I don't think we had the luxury of getting players younger and bringing them on. I think we had to have a few sort of key players in, and then you've seen transfers since have all been a bit younger and a bit more into that traditional mould. And listen, as somebody that's about to turn 40 this year, I'm in no way thinking that 28-year-old is too old, right? I would skin a grown man alive to be 28 again. But Declan, you're right in terms of value. Players, unless they're a superstar, don't tend to go for a lot of money when they get to that 30 mark. They seem to have a lot of free transfers, or because they don't tend to get long-term deals unless you're Thiago Silva. So I think we have to sort of trust the process, and I think you're right. I think Ange's been canny enough to sort of go, right, this is where we need to improve the team, get them in January, so by the summer they're up to speed, and if he needs to improve anyone else, then they can come in and they can replace them and so on. And I think he said as well, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something about don't get too close to players, or
don't be too close to your heroes. Yep.
Whatever it is, like, he's basically, I'll punt them if that arises. And he's quite right, because no player is bigger than the club. And I think the way Ange sees it is the club's a collective, it's Celtic Football Club, and then everybody else is just part of it. And I think that's quite a good way of thinking. It's a way that maybe previous managers, or maybe as his fans, we've not looked at it that way before. Yeah.
Certainly, coming out, Celtic want to keep Carl Starfelt. I'd be very much willing to keep Carl Starfelt too. I think he's been an important player for us. People right away are saying, if 27, 28 is the selling age, we should worry about Kyogo. Then I'm not saying that every player that when they turn a certain age, we're not going to become DiCaprio FCs, I've been told. I'm just kind of looking at the overview picture and taking every kind of wee nugget that the manager's given us about, as you say, Brian, not getting attached to people and whatever else, and how we evolve and move on. It's an interesting discussion to have, because I think that's always something that Celtic's going to continually do. I think for our business model to work, which is important in how we do in the park, that we need to have, we can't have that same point that we got to 2 seasons ago, when you've got players who have overstayed their welcome, didn't want to be there, and have hung on to them, and we end up with a fee that can't be properly reinvested into the side. But
sorry, just one quick point before we move on. See, in terms of the Kyogo thing with age, I think it's slightly different for the Japanese players, because they don't start playing until they're a bit later. So if you look at Hatate, who's 24, he's only been playing professionally for about 2.5 years or something like that. It's crazy.
That's right. Yep.
If you look at that, relatively speaking, you have to say it does vary from player to player. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think Kyogo's got a long way. Even Ange says he's nowhere near his peak yet, which is quite interesting when you consider his age. But I think if you look at the Japanese players coming through, the fact Nakamura's only just retired, it's a different way of doing it. So
there was a boy that was still playing in the top flight in the J League. He was 52, 53 years old, but he was still playing, the oldest living professional footballer. I think his name was Miura. He was still playing there at 53 years old.
Yeah, well, I think Craig Falconbridge, I think it's something that Paul was talking about, was still kicking the ball there, who Celtic fans will remember for the season we were talking about earlier on, but was still, up until fairly recently, I think was still playing football. It's just an interesting conversation to have. As I say, it's interesting that obviously that we've brought Kobayashi in. Brian, you bring it to that point there that Japan will probably be looking at him as someone who they want to break into their first team due to the age profile of Yoshida and everybody else, and what that kind of means for Starfield. But as I say, I think my point in Starfield just now is I think he's a valuable player to our team, he's an integral part of our team, and as long as he's happy at the club, I'd be more than willing to keep him there. But again, it was a shame for him. I think he only played one Champions League game for us, if I'm correct in saying, and that was a 5-1 mauling in the Bernabeu because of his injury too. So hopefully the injury's well behind him and he kicks on. But for me, he's an important player for us at this point in time. Just now, I think it was just something that I wanted to touch on because it was there, and looking at the age and everything else that comes into it with market value, as well as that his contract's up at Celtic in 2025. Similar to possibly Yakimakis, players at that age look to cash in possibly in a big final payday, which he might do also. But again, he might be looking at renewing his contract at Celtic and whatever that would entail. Also, it's kind of strange at this point, Brian, because see, as I said earlier when we're talking about the squad, playing the one game a week, we're kind of usually in a Tuesday we're looking towards a Wednesday game, but it's not that point. So just kind of taking a wee step forward towards Aberdeen at the weekend. It shouldn't be a game that we're worried about. We've got our old player, Barry Robson, in the dressing room. I don't think it's a job that Ange has been linked to. I think he's been linked to everybody else. My local team up the road, Partick Thistle, I don't know if they've maybe contacted him too. I don't even know, maybe what Motherwell might even have a wee interest in Ange there because he seems to get linked to everybody else. But looking at this Aberdeen game, hopefully he's not tied up in a chair upstairs with two bodyguards outside the door and he does the presser before Aberdeen. But just kind of looking towards that game, it'll be game 26 in the league and it should hopefully just be another routine tick off. But again, do you think that the team that play against Aberdeen will be a good indication of what you're probably looking towards in the cup final?
No, I think that
no.
I don't think that it will be as simple as that. I think, as I say, I think all will probably start, but I don't think he'll start the cup final. I think he maybe give players maybe one last chance. So I think he probably have in his head who's going to start the cup final, probably. So I think Mike was saying is right. Let me just, if there's maybe a couple of players, maybe I'm not sure over Moy or O'Reilly. Maybe you start O'Reilly just to see. So I think you may see that. I don't think you can read. I think just in general, I don't think you can read too much into Ange's selections because we can never guess them. It's very rare that we get them right because he does tinker a wee bit. Now it's never mass changes. It's always wee bits now and again. Only point about him getting tied up to the chair, I was laughing as well when he was talking to Gordon Strachan about it. When he was interviewed and he said, "Well, you've seen the size of John Kennedy. Doesn't need any bodyguards. He'll tell me to sit down, just do it," which I thought was quite funny. And then obviously with the striking link as well, Barry Robson. Is he still?
No, he'll be taking charge of Aberdeen at the weekend. Aye,
scored with his first touch against
that's
Aberdeen.
Right.
His first goal for Celtic.
The free kick.
Free kick. That's right. Aye.
It's the game that actually played up. If you watch it back, he does this ridiculous wee trick. He kind of takes the ball back, takes it, and then puts the ball over. I think it's Scott McDonald who gets the goal, but Robson, it's a terrific free kick. That just bends it right round the Aberdeen wall.
I think he's a very underrated player for Celtic. I also remember the game against Rangers where he absolutely smashes Christian Daly, remember? Like first minute. I think him and Paul Hartley were an incredible partnership that season and kept Scott Brown out the team. And then look how that turned out for Scott, So the reason I mention that is if you look at these players coming in, maybe it's not the right time right now, but it doesn't mean it won't be. Certain players at certain time are just in a purple patch. And so I don't necessarily think the team that plays against Aberdeen will be the one that starts against them in the cup final. But I think it maybe be players' last chance to sort of say, no, you need to start me. And that in itself is quite exciting because you expect a good performance.
As a Celtic team, that I was 8 when we won that title, so I kind of remember it pretty well, and always kind of look back on it quite fond to be Big Jan, Scott McDonald up top, that midfield, Robson, Hartley, and then the back two pair of Caldwell, McManus with Big Boric and goals. Not a bad team. Liam Elliott at left back, whatever else. Remember it pretty well.
Last 16 in the Champions League twice in the bounce.
Right.
McManus.
Right. James, you might just be a wee bit too young to remember that team.
Stratton's he's sort of the first Celtic manager I remember. I remember for Christmas one year I got, it was the DVD after Stratton won his third title. That's sort of the first Celtic team I remember. So it's a bit strange now seeing Barry Robson in an opposing dugout against Celtic. I'm just glad that there's another job sort of off the market that Ange could have been potentially linked with. Jesse Marsh taking over at Southampton. They've got Barry Robson maybe taking the reins at Aberdeen. But I don't think you can look too much into the Aberdeen game as an indicator for the sort of the cup final. I think unless O scores a hat-trick or something against Aberdeen, I'm fairly confident it'll be Dies Maida up front, as Brian was saying there.
Yeah. That's if Kyogo's no fit. He might be back. He might be actually all right. If you remember right, he got that injury against Rangers and he came on as a sub, I think, 3 or 4 days later against Real Madrid. So you might give him a wee bit more time to heal up. But it looked all right walking around the pitch on Saturday after the game. So hopefully, here's hoping and praying.
He never seems to get a proper crack at it against Rangers. There's always sort of something up with Kyogo, whether he's playing off the left or he's got an injury now. He'll just be coming back from an injury. So whether he'll start or he'll be in the bench, who knows? But let's just keep our fingers crossed and hope he's fit.
Yep. No. Hopefully. We'll finish on this. Robert's highlighted it. Barkas to return to Celtic at the end of the season. Obviously came out yesterday, Brian. The Utrecht. I'm not going to be able to foot the bill for Big Barky, as we know him as, meaning he'll come back. Paul did a great thread. Don't know if it was on his own Twitter or the Acsom Twitter yesterday in terms of the lone players that Celtic have got out. He's certainly not one player, Brian, who I think will be back playing in a Celtic jersey anytime soon.
Oh, big hologram horns? No, I hope not. But it's interesting when you think about that, actually. Well, I'm on Twitter now, but also in the summer we could have Ayeti, Barkas, Sorrell, Urhoghide, Shaw. I don't know if Hazard's here or he's back at loan.
He's back now, yep.
And then you could also have maybe Starfelt leaving, Welsh, don't know what's happening with him, Johnson coming back. So it's a mad summer again. You know, it's meant to think that Sorrell is still a player. It feels so long ago that, you know what I mean? Like, so I'd be interested to see a bit Barkas. Listen, I'd give him $4 million and he'll come back. He's got to be one of my least favourite Celtic players of all time. I'm sure he's a lovely guy and I wish him a good career, but he was rotten for me. Rotten.
Yeah, he was coming out in the media when he first went to Utrecht. He wouldn't recommend joining Celtic to any player. So you really want to give a second chance to a guy that has an attitude like that towards the club, and also a player who was perhaps the worst player I've ever seen in a Celtic shirt. And I don't think...
Is that... you going with that? Mine's is John Joe Kenny, by the way.
John Joe
I thought he was absolutely rotten.
Barkas was worse. For
right,
me,
okay.
Barkas I think Barkas. I don't know if he's worst player ever. I didn't really think about that because we've had some crackers over the years.
You were the 90s man, Brian, so you're going to have a lot worse experience.
As well. Remember Dewey, the big Chinese centre half where they played 45 minutes against Clyde and Newcastle. Against in Roy Keane's debut, he's got to be up there as well. We should maybe make our worst ever Celtic 11 for next time we're on the show, boys. Let's do that because that'll be interesting to see.
Doing 11s like that with Acsom, I think it was COVID time when we did Cult Hero 11. I'll be there somewhere if you go and dig it out. Be interested to maybe go back to that because somebody like Yakimakis could actually be champing at the door to get into that team because, you know, a player and a half season type of thing. But again, it depends what people define as a cult hero and what that is, whether it's the way they dress, whether it's to be there as a football player, or whether it's how long they're at the club for. Brian, just to kind of finally finish it, touches on with that Barker, I think, is there anybody at this point in time, as I asked you, midway through February, you expect to come back to Celtic and be in the equation? Is it somebody like Adam Montgomery and Mikey Johnson you expect to come back?
No, if I'm honest.
No.
I thought, if anyone, Montgomery's probably got the most chance because of his age, and I think he's done pretty well in his loan spells. And I actually thought he was doing all right under Ange at first, but I'm not sure. I mean, is he better than Bernabei or Taylor? I don't know. I'm not convinced, so I wouldn't see it. Johnson's an interesting one because I think he's done quite well in Portugal, and I know Ange did like him, but again, if you look at Rocco Vata coming through, there's Haksabanovic getting another full season under him and stuff. I don't think there's any room for him, so hopefully not. But yeah, we don't know. Just it'd be good to see. I'll think about it tonight while I'm having my jelly and ice cream after my Valentine's Day dinner.
There you go. A pudding, I think, fit for any Celtic fan in Valentine's Day. But we'll leave in that. Thanks to everybody who's joined us. As I said midway through the show, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. We've got a pair of tickets there for the 1-star event to it's a tribute night to Wim Jansen, and it's 25 years since they stopped the 10 up. Should be a cracking night, so please do subscribe to the channel. James, Brian, good to catch up. Thanks for all the commenters, and we'll catch you tomorrow on a